Welcome to the Personal Brand Era podcast. I'm your host, Ella Ray, and I'm excited to talk to Stephenie Luttman today, who is a high conflict divorce coach and high conflict co-parenting coach. She helps women navigate high conflict divorce and help them post-dissolution if they are already out, but struggling with post-separation, abuse, and continued coercive control. She helps women take back their power, find the freedom to create a new life, and help them empower their children, which I find extremely important. What inspired you to get into this specific niche?
Thank you for having me. It was actually my own high conflict divorce situation that I found myself in about four years ago. So I was married to a narcissist for almost 20 years and found myself in the midst of a pretty massive divorce and custody, what I call hurricane, back in 2019. And after coming out of that with feeling like I got through it, but also navigated it to the best that I could at the time, but also looking for, it was really post-dissolution that I started looking into more resources with dealing with a high conflict like ex-partner. I had known some things about narcissism when everything rolled out, but then started digging for more and more resources into just having more support, because I felt like, again, I got through the situation, but wasn't super well supported going through it. So I then stumbled upon a high conflict divorce coach who was offering a certification program, and I started kind of dreaming bigger. I've been in career transition for the last 3 to 4 years, actually. So just because of that. So it was really born out of my own desire to help moms and protective parents who are, find themselves in this kind of a cyclone of somebody who just really wants, control, and who just feeds off of conflict, that being the high conflict ex-partner, or if you're not out yet, the partner that you're with. So
that's so amazing that you used your own experience and added even a certification on it to really help women. And what are the types of women that usually come to you seeking for help?
Yeah, these are usually women who, some of them have kind of picked up on, usually they're young moms. I would say most of my clients have kids anywhere from little, toddlers to teenagers. There's a few who have, adult kids, but usually by the time that your child has gone beyond 18, it's not that you aren't still navigating some things, but your child is gaining more and more independence, right? So I would say it's mostly these women who have young kids who are very dependent on parent figures in their life, and who all of a sudden find themselves in a very, what I oftentimes say, like a very foggy, confusing time period where they've known that their marriage has been kind of off, or kind of squelching in some ways. They may even say controlling, that those things have been present, but all of a sudden there comes kind of a turning point where things feel very out of control. Maybe divorce papers have been filed, or divorce has been talked about. And usually when that process starts, whether it's just the conversation of divorce, or maybe even the young mom has realized, like, look, I can't stay in this relationship anymore. It's not serving me. Maybe they've been to some therapy and have kind of come to light with what's actually going on. maybe even the word abuse has been, mentioned, because that can be kind of a tricky thing. If you're not being physically beat up every day, the emotional and psychological patterns are sometimes hard to pinpoint. So usually there's been some sort of light bulb that's come on, whether it's through a professional or through their own investigation, and they're starting to put some pieces together. And as that starts to happen, usually conflict starts going through the roof, within the home. And especially if somebody has filed for divorce, whether that's the woman herself or in an attempt to keep control, the partner has filed. And then usually, she's in kind of a panic because she doesn't know the legal system. And then all of a sudden, the children are at the center of the control tactics now. And for a mother, any of us who are moms, that is just such a sensitive area within all of us. That all of a sudden you've got this person kind of using the children to jerk her around once again in an effort to maintain control of her. So usually it's women who may not even know exactly all the things that are going on, but it's like more and more pieces start to fall together that this isn't right. And I hear a lot of women say, yeah, I looked you up because I'm all of a sudden aware of narcissism or high conflict, like this term high conflict. And I just Googled, high conflict divorce. And all of a sudden I'm realizing this is what I'm in. Like I'm in a high conflict relationship. So.
Yeah, there are a lot of things going on in this particular situation, and I would like to dive into the three things that the woman needs to basically handle, which is very, very hard, I can imagine. Having kids myself, yeah, just like you said, we know what it is and how much is at stake. So first, she needs to kind of handle her own emotions, and this is like it's always emotional for mothers specifically, right? And these narcissistic partners oftentimes know how to trigger those emotions, so she needs to be in control
Absolutely.
of her emotions, right? And also she needs to kind of make sure that the kid is all right going through this high conflict divorce or whatever the situation is, right? And also she needs to kind of handle the behavior of the now ex-partner, right? She needs to know the strategies and the tactics and maybe some exercises to kind of keep herself always on top of her game, so to speak, to not give in to these tactics that they sometimes use to, as you said, stay in control. And my feeling is that these men oftentimes try to really, that's the number one thing or game play, to be in control. Control is something very, very important to them. They don't want to lose
absolutely.
at any point. So, and we as women oftentimes feel so superior, insignificant compared to them, right? When they try to use these tactics. So, can you walk us and my listeners through these three areas and how this woman in such a situation can navigate her own emotions? How do you help your clients do that? How to make sure that your kid is fine, that the mental state of your kid is okay, and that you still kind of also navigate the ex-partner's parenting style, right? I find that also quite challenging, right? If you don't agree with certain things, you still need some strategies for that. And how do you deal with a partner who is indeed narcissistic and maybe even abusive, and you share the custody of the children? Like, how do you ever get out of this healed? How can you navigate through that?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's first of all, I think there's power in recognizing that the situation is complex, right? Like part of how we start finding our freedom and finding our footing and finding our own center is you have to acknowledge what is actually present and what is there. You have to acknowledge reality for what it is. So you first have to recognize, yeah, this is a really difficult situation, and the walk out of it and the navigation inside of it is not going to be easy. It's especially in the first couple of years, it is a pretty steep uphill climb. And I don't mean to come across as, that this is daunting. You're never going to get out of it. Your kids' lives are ruined. Right. We can go to that extreme too. I feel like as like victims of this level of abuse, especially if it's been a sustained abuse for decades. Like for me, it was half of my life. And it's easy then to cycle into this pit of, oh my gosh, I'm never going to get out. It's also easy, I think, too. You could swing the other way and be like, oh, well, if I just have divorce papers and, I have some finality, this is going to be like, this person's going to cooperate with me. And I don't know that I've really pinpointed exactly where that illusion comes from, because it is an illusion. Like I get clients to recognize, look, like you have been in this relationship, you've known this has been hard. Like what aspects of this have been hard? So what is it that makes us think, oh, we have papers? Maybe it's kind of thinking there is law that tells both people how to cooperate, and I can cooperate, so they're going to cooperate. And it's just not, that is not the reality that you're dealing with. So one of my favorite things, my biggest step of freedom, I feel like, and peace and all of this has been continuing to look at those shadow points within myself and what kept me tied in with this sort of personality type. Like there was something within them that has fed me and helped me try to feel, I don't know, more secure, or, because they are very good at love bombing. And like when they're trying to keep you in that cycle, they're very good at saying the right thing at just the right time, and then, so part of it is recognizing what cycle you have been in, and looking at yourself and starting to unpack those things. And that's where I feel like some of us we don't want to like look within look within and heal thyself. It's a very old, right, ancient saying, like heal thyself. And there is such power though in that. Is really, I feel like, the only true step out of something like this and navigating it, because you're not going to be 100% out. You're going to have part of a foot in it and part of a foot out of it, because you share children with this person. And that's the heartache in it. That's and recognizing that person, once they start to lose control of you, that's what, we refer to as post-separation abuse and coercive control. Like the control doesn't end just because you have a piece of paper that says you're not married to this person anymore. And so it's also recognizing the patterns that they're now going to shift. I oftentimes say a narcissist is like, I have my clients look at like, what were the things that you thought, oh, if I jump through this hoop, I've hit the target. They're going to be happy. They're going to cooperate. And yeah, it may work for part of a day or part of a week. But the hoop is always changing. So a lot of it too is like the power of working on yourself, of recognizing the patterns, right? Awareness is so powerful. And it doesn't stop with awareness, but just being aware of the cycles that also, these sorts of people, not to like put them in a box, but narcissists, high conflict individuals, you referenced it earlier, it is all about control. It is all about how much they can control you, ping you, control your kids, ping your kids' emotions, right? And so if you know control is at the top of control and winning are always at the top for them, then we can look at the patterns of that particular person and how they've operated your entire relationship, how you saw that play out with your children when you were with them. Because the thing is that it's not that it didn't exist, it's just that you weren't aware that the patterns were there. And patterns with high conflict people, in fact, I learned this from an expert in this whole field. Patterns with high conflict people are the same patterns, whether you're dealing with a person who kidnaps children and holds them for, or people and holds them for ransom, or your ex-partner who is trying to overtake your entire emotional state for a day because they're arguing with you over the pickup and drop off location that you thought was agreed upon, but they've all of a sudden thrown a wrench in the plan. Like, there are patterns to these people, and they may look a little bit different per situation. As I talk to women, the patterns are the same, the situations are a little different. So if we can start to identify what are the patterns, then you can be one step ahead of the game. If you know that you're sending a message, as you're working on communication, as you're like sending a message about something and this person's going to react in a certain way, well, then you already know that's going to be the reaction. You can prep yourself, you can prep your child for what the reaction is coming, and you're better prepared. So there are ways to stay one step ahead. It's just that for so long we've been in a relationship that we're constantly getting blindsided because we don't really know, we're not aware of what pattern we're in. And your kids really aren't aware of the patterns with that parent either until you start kind of bringing to light, like, they're venting about, oh, dad just is always controlling about this. And if you help them unpack it, like, yeah, but really, is this any different from the last time that dad complained about what outfit you put on before you went to church on Sunday? Like, awareness is that's like one of my top things. Like, so coming back to your question, like, I feel like the power is within us because we have all the answers we need within us. It's just that person has convinced you you're powerless. That person has convinced you don't know anything. That person has convinced you need them to survive. You need them to get along in life. Like, they have dumbed you down for 7, 10, 15, 20 years, and you believe it. And so if we can start, looking within first, let's start unpacking that a little bit. Let's see the ways that your triggers and reactions, the way that they ping you, how do they ping your children? That is really a lot of the power as you're unpacking, those things. And then as you start building that confidence within yourself, that is actually such a beautiful gift to give your children, because your children, we are resilient as humans. It's just a narcissistic type or a high conflict type has convinced you that you're not resilient and that you're weak and that you know nothing. And I feel like that's such a powerhouse as mothers too, because kids, any of us who are moms know kids come in, some of them as like such wise souls that they're tapped into their power. We condition them not to trust their power and their resilience. And that is such a gift as the growth-minded, conscious, evolving parent. That is such a gift to your kids. And that's what ends up carrying all of you as a unit through something like this.
I love how you phrased it, that the power really lies not in trying to change the ex-partner, for example, into cooperation that they might have never done before, right? And especially when you realize it after then, right? What kind of patterns have been going on all the time. But that the true power really lies in your own empowerment and in your own awareness of these patterns and how you can stay in control of your own emotions, of your mental state, and really apply a lot of empathy and self-care to yourself first, I feel, before you ever try to kind of even control the ex-partner, because like you have learned that that is impossible anyway. If they want to stay on top of control and you try to get on that battle, you want to control as well, you will end up being in battle all the time. When you kind of choose a different level, so to speak, they are always in seeking out control, but you are
Yep.
having an empowered state of mind. I feel like he has no control over you if you
No.
are really in your own lane, so to speak, in your own power, and you know what you want to feel in every situation, no matter what he tries, or what he
Absolutely.
says, right? How he tries to trigger you, right? And
Yep.
if you know a couple of tricks in communication, that's something that you mentioned is so powerful. When you learn to say certain things that take their urge to have control completely away, like
Yep.
they will be numbed, so to speak. They will not know what to say once you learn what to say or how to reply. So communication is, I feel, tremendously important in this instance, right? And not only with your
Right.
partner, right, but also with your kid, as you mentioned, to kind of help
Absolutely.
them navigate that extremely difficult situation, especially when the kids are young. I feel it's very, very challenging to, I mean, what do you tell a 3-year-old, right, when you go through a divorce? A high
Right.
abusive divorce, that's like how do you explain that to a little child, right? And even if
Right.
they 6 or 7, it's still a very complex topic. So I feel like mothers have a lot on their plate when they are trying to get through this situation.
Right. And you spoke to it. Communication is actually one of my favorite things to help clients work on. And that's a multi level thing. First of all, we have to work on the communication with ourselves. Right, we all have varying levels of how strong our inner critic is. I've said this to my kids so many times. I feel like as humans, sometimes not, there's something in there that we criticize our, criticize ourselves far worse than most people around us are actually. I mean, this narcissistic person is pretty critical. However, they are doing that because of how strong the critic is in their own mind, right? And so we have to first practice tons of self-compassion, self-kindness, um, and really being gentle with ourselves. Like, this is a hard situation. You have endured a lot. Like, you are a resilient person. If you were living in an intimate partner relationship with someone like this for X amount of time. And so it's like we have to gain back control of how we talk to ourselves. We have to also harness this, like, I call it this like superpower. You do have a superpower in how you communicate with this person, because if you learn that language, if you learn how to turn the tide a little bit and communicate in a different way, it massively changes the equation. So one of my favorite things to do with clients is start sending me screenshots of what this person is throwing at you. Let's deconstruct it, because usually 3 paragraphs really mean one sentence. They have like exploded out at you, which pings your nervous system, gets you overwhelmed, gets you in fight or flight state. So let's take a breath. Not every message needs to be answered in urgency. That high conflict person also brings a lot of like demand and urgency, right? Because that's the pattern you've been in for however many years. And they're used to saying whatever they want, demanding an answer out of you. And once again, awareness. If you can look at these messages and then dissect them, like get a little bit of objectivity. And that's where I come in, because a message to me from your ex doesn't bother me. Now, I have to practice my own level of self-reflection from my own ex, because I am human, and your nervous system is your nervous system. Like, trauma doesn't care how much you know. And so, but the power of having an objective person is I can look at these messages. I'm not triggered by your ex. I can see that 3 paragraphs really means one main point. So let's find a friendly way, a brief way, but also let's get to the point of an informative way of responding to them that isn't keeping up the cycle of reactivity. That is, because that's what they're looking for. That narcissistic, high conflict person is looking for the conflict. And so how can we start communicating in a way that doesn't keep the cycle going and going and going and going? Because that person, you're not living with them anymore, or maybe you're on your way out, or like I said, post dissolution, I've got people who 3 years later still are having a lot of issues. And communication is one of the biggest ones, because once again, they want to fight with you. And they want to fight with your kids too. And they want to get your kids fighting with each other. And so if you can start communicating with yourself in a healthier, more peaceful, grounded way, and then you have that pattern with your children within your own home that is now separate from that other person. And if you learn key ways of keeping it friendly, keeping it light, keeping it informative, and keeping it brief, a fascinating thing starts happening. I actually just learned about this. A psychologist actually said that that's by the simple act of mirroring, that person is going to start responding to you in a different way, not because they know what's going on, but it's almost like you're rubbing off on them. Like, that's powerful. That's incredibly powerful. And at first it's a little unsettling. Like, when I noticed the shift with my ex, he would start responding in briefer ways. And I kind of thought, oh, well, what does that mean? And now I realize, like, no, that's the power that I had over establishing a certain way of communicating. And yeah, every once in a while he's not a grounded person. He's a reactive person. So every once in a while he's going to go flying off the rails again and calling me manipulative and controlling and, projecting back on me. But once again, if I'm coming back to my center, that is a powerhouse, right? Your power lies within. And communication is literally one of my favorite things to help people harness control of in your own life, because it is not a grounded place for that high conflict narcissistic person, and it never will be.
That's so interesting. You have so much experience now for 4 years, you say. What are the practical steps that someone or a woman that is in a situation in the beginning of maybe separating, or maybe in the stage of getting divorced, what are some practical steps you would give her to actually stay grounded?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm also certified in mindfulness and meditation. And somehow I guess it was my own soul that knew what I needed. But when things were really falling apart for me, the first thing I started doing, I had been in therapy. So I feel like I oftentimes tell clients this is like a multi-layered approach to your support stepping out of this situation. This is not, once again, it's not an easy situation to step out of. And, if they've stumbled upon me and decided they need a coach, I mean, I feel like a coach, I want to be the coach I didn't have as I was stepping out of this, right? So it's like, I want to come alongside you, be a layer of support for you. I oftentimes will say, are you also seeing a therapist? Because a therapist is going to help you in ways I can't, I can't help you. I've, in a lot of ways, learned a lot, in kind of my own journey of 7 years of therapy, but I'm not a therapist. So what are your layers? I would first say is you're like looking to step out or you are stepping out. Even if you have stepped out, it's one of the first questions I ask, like, what are your layers of support? Do you have a coach? Do you have other mentors? Do you have good friends? Do you have family? Because we kind of have to see like what's there, right? And also, other practical stuff. It really kind of depends on where you're at. Like, are you looking to leave and your partner knows you're looking to leave? Or is this still kind of under the table? They don't, because some decide, to start seeking out some kind of, it doesn't happen very often, but some kind of preemptive, you know, strategies before I file for divorce or something like that. Another major thing with these high conflict situations, do you have, like, if you are in the midst of divorce or you're getting ready to file, does your attorney understand high conflict? That is key because not every family law attorney thinks that narcissism exists. Now, this is not something that's going to come up in a court proceeding. We never advise, we've got to get away from labels. But as long as, like, a good question to ask, your attorney, do you understand high conflict? Because this isn't just an amicable, like, we're going to split things halfway. And these court cases go on for definitely a solid year, sometimes longer than that. And these can also be proceedings that come back into court multiple times over a child's life. So you need to have good legal support that understands this isn't just, your run of the mill, hard, quote unquote, hard divorce. This is a high conflict situation. And do you understand that? I would say also find a good support group, like other women that have either been through what you've been through or going through what you're going through. Which, I have an online support group of women that meet, twice monthly. I'm getting ready to launch my Facebook group. Once again, groups are solidly important for helping each other get through this, because oftentimes if you're in a situation like this, you're talking with, maybe your friends that you've had for 15 years or your family members, and nobody has any idea what it's almost like. Well, why do you guys have to be arguing about this so much? Or why do you have to be complaining about this? These all sound like little things that he's doing. Any of us who have been in it know that these are not little things, or they're just a massive amount of little things. It's like death by paper cuts. It's like, and so practical steps are like, I find support is huge. Support for yourself, support for your children. Are there people in your children's life who can really come along and offer them the emotional and psychological support that they need to navigate this thing? Because once again, this is a marathon, not a sprint. This is a long haul. It is, and it's exhausting. And you have to have those layers around you so that as you file for divorce or as you navigate the divorce process, you have people you can lean on, and then once you're out, what does life look like? Like, what do you want to create? What do you have people around you who will support your fun adventure into, oh, I wanted to pick up art again, so I'm taking this art class, oh, that's amazing. You have to, support is so huge, because if you have critics in your crowd, it's only going to add to the massive criticism that you're receiving as you're exiting this relationship.
Support is incredibly huge. And I think that most of the women, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, may be a bit frightened or timid to even seek out support in these situations.
Absolutely.
Because I can imagine being that type of being with a narcissist who oftentimes takes control, he needs a person who doesn't want to control, right? Who is even leaning into being controlled. That's oftentimes the kind of character type of woman that would be okay with a narcissist coming into their lives, just the things that you were mentioning in the beginning. And I feel like when they are in this situation, they might be very timid once they realize, oh my God, I've been with a narcissist for so long. How did I not notice? How did I not know? Especially if the woman is generally intelligent, right? And most of them are, right? These are not like,
most of them are.
yeah, and
all of them are.
Yeah, that's the problem, right? And then they start blaming themselves that how did I not know? How did I on earth get even children into this situation, right? How did I allow this to even get this far? And they start to blame themselves. That's like a vicious cycle. If you don't have a support system, I feel like it will be eating you alive. So if any woman now listening to this and you are kind of shaming yourself for your decisions in the past, I can relate to that. I cannot even find enough words how much I can relate to this. And it will be so painful for you continuing with that without the support. So if you are that type of woman who is in such a situation, I urge you to please seek out support and get over your own shaming, and please love yourself enough. Please have enough empathy for yourself to realize that you could only have reacted and made decisions based on the knowledge that you had in the past. So if you are smarter now, it is even more an indication that you are a smart woman and that you will make better decisions as you go along, and you will make better and more prolific things happen in your life once you get out of this situation, once you get through with the divorce, right? And once you start learning more, establishing the strategies, learning more the communication skills, right? You will feel so much better if you have a support system, even if it's just one person who kind of motivates you, who believes in you, who believes what you say, and doesn't just like you mentioned, it doesn't tell you, oh, that's just a small thing. Why are you worried so much about it? Why do you have to talk so much about it? It's just a little blip in the universe, But for you, is this huge thing that is tied with the emotions that you have for yourself, that you have for your children. You're worried constantly, right? You're terrified, maybe even if it's an abusive relationship, even, right? You're terrified constantly. So you need a person who really, truly, deeply believes in you, what you say, and doesn't play it down, whatever you say. So I find it so important that you mentioned the support system, and also the support system for the children, because they are dealing with the situation on a different level and in a different way than we do. So placing smart role models in their lives is, I feel, a good step into the future for them. For example, if your ex-partner especially has a parenting style that you don't agree with, right, or does things that may be even hurting the children, but you cannot really do anything about it, or there's not enough evidence, but it's constantly eating you up, it is a good way to really place other role models into the lives of your children. So your children will be smart enough to choose, because children at some point, if they've not been damaged to the total of their soul, they will recognize, right? They will see, oh, this person is really, really better with me. Like how he treats me it feels better. I don't feel controlled, like what you mentioned, right? There's not a lot of arguing. There's not a lot of negative emotions that is being instilled in me. Children will notice at some point who is better with them. So if there's no other way out, the support system is so crucial.
Yep, absolutely. Because kids that's the gift too, is that you're giving them an experience where, and this is even the power of being out of the situation rather than trying to navigate this. Because a lot of moms will hold this guilt of, well, why did I leave? Or, even if he left, it's almost like did I do something where I could have stayed in it to protect my kids all the time? And the thing is that it's not doing your kids any service to still be in the muddied water with that person. The power is when you get out and they can hold two environments. They can hold the experience and the unconditional love and the kindness and the empathy and the validation with you. And because really, I don't have to say anything about the other environment for it to feel different, right? It's the power of helping your kids feel both, of like having that safe place to come to you and unpack what's going on over here and get validation, and then they get to build their own experience. They get to build this, they get to take from this experience and this other safe experience, and that is the power of holding both.
Yeah. Do you know any kind of indications for children when they are experiencing the negative effects of a high conflict divorce, and how could you address them?
Yeah, I mean, I think of my own children. I've noticed, patterns of, and it's not that it's that they're experiencing it in a, this is like, oh my gosh, a detrimental. They're gonna be pieces of the entire situation. They're gonna have to unravel their own as adults, right? As late teenagers, adults. But what I notice is that when my children are around their father, there's a lot of, they kind of turn into little robots. There's a lot of like shutdown. They'll also bottle up a lot of emotions. So it's like they will return from that environment as little pressure cookers. Like it's almost like everything then explodes. I have one child that, anger is like the top emotion. He just gets angry about everything. And I have a child that she just gets sad about a lot of things. Like sadness is what just seeps out. I have another child that just like shuts down. He goes real interior. And you have to recognize like these are their ways of coping in that other environment. And so I recognize that like this is what happens. I know I can prep again, it's the power of prepping myself for when they come back to me. It's managing my own triggers and also trying not to control them or trying to, gloss over everything and like, oh, but we shouldn't be sad or we shouldn't be angry or we shouldn't be shut down. We need to just be happy and connected and, all the time, but once again, this is what the pattern is there. They're having to navigate two realities. So if you can recognize what is it in your kids, what do they need most from you when they come back? You know that they're going to be maybe shut down. So maybe they need some space to just decompress in their room or wherever safe space in your house. Give them the space to just decompress. Don't jump all over them with questions or, even if your questions are curious, like we are as protective moms, like we're curious. And it's like, no, just like give them space. Or I have one child, she just wants to come in and just talk about everything, like to talk, give her that space to just vent all the things, just listen. I do a lot of listening, like listen, even if it's the, more ragey, kind of venting. But this is like, so recognizing that they're going to come back with these patterns. It's not personal. That's the other thing. This is not personal to you as a mother, as a parent. I speak to dads too, but it's like, this is not personal to you as a parent. This is them, their own ways of coping, their own ways of putting up some sort of shell that they need to, defense mechanisms in that environment. And how can you come in from another direction, offering them exactly what their nervous system needs? helping them decompress. You know, if they're all worked up, let's find ways to come into our breath. Let's find ways to hold presence with each other or connection. Or like my child that needs space, I just give him space. And then maybe after a little bit of time, you know, hey, I'm here if you need me, if you need to talk about anything, and not being too pushy. So I feel like if you have multiple children, it's going to be recognizing what is it in each child, in how they react in that situation, in that other environment, and how can you be the safe, connecting, you know, emotional parent that you can be. How can you be their best medicine in that moment? And it's not going to be the same for every child, and it's not going to be the same in every situation that they walk in and out of either. So once again, I come back to like loads of self-awareness, because if you can continue to work on yourself and know what triggers are, or know what crossing boundaries looks like, or know what, oh, this is like another form of control, or this is gaslighting, you know, you can teach your kids those things at very young ages in very language appropriate, age appropriate ways, and empower them. Because that, once again, you are a powerhouse. Like, you have so much influence over this child, and building up their own sense of autonomy and power with that person, and their resilience is the best gift that you can give them.
I love this so much. And you mentioned three types of children, and I'm sure that there might be more, but you mentioned the one that would shut down. You mentioned the sad one, and you also mentioned the angry one. I would love to know what are the strategies that you would use for an angry child, maybe even someone who would be physically angry or violent because of the experiences.
Yep.
Would you rather listen to the child and even let it happen, so to speak, the anger
Yep.
and the violent, maybe even words that children might want to use, you know, to vent out? What are the strategies that you find useful?
Oh yeah, this has been a learning curve, because I have a child who, when divorce was filed, he was 3.5, and and there were a lot of times he would come back from dad's house, and explosive anger. I would say all the way through age 4 into age 5, explosive anger. And at times would, you know, hit me, at times would lash out at the nearest sibling, would tear apart a room. And so I actually, I mean, and talking about support, right? I sought support with I needed help because nothing was working, and it was triggering me. And, my deep well of frustration. And he and I were caught in this loop. And what I learned with a child like that, first of all, I had to recognize, like, he feels safest in my house. That's why all this emotion comes out. And the emotion of anger itself is not a bad thing, right? I mean, I grew up believing it was a bad thing, but anger is not a bad thing. Anger is just another emotion that we all feel. And so I then started just validating how he felt. Like, you look angry, you look frustrated. I would be angry too if I had just experienced whatever it is that you're going through. And then, so recognizing it, right? Validating it, not shaming it. I accept every part of you. And at the same time, we have to find a way to get this, to process this and get this out in a safe way that keeps me safe, that keeps you safe, that keeps your brother or sister safe. And so, no, you can't just like destroy a room and start breaking things, because that is harming the items in our house. You can't punch me because that's harming me. You can't even take this out on self-harm, not an option either. So let's find ways that work for you. And it took a little bit to figure out what, because this child is a very physical child. And so we started doing things like, you can go outside and take a stick and beat the ground. You can go into your room and scream into your pillow. You can run laps around the house if you need to go run laps and get this energy moving, right? Because I've done a lot of work in like embodiment and even in mindfulness and meditation, this is like, these are things we feel in our body. And if we try to shove them away, shove them down, they're not going anywhere. They're just going to get stored somewhere within this, powerhouse of a body we have. And so how can we process it? I actually also bought a punching bag for my basement. You can go punch it out all you want to, scream in the basement all you want to. And then when you're ready to process this, talk about it, I'm here to listen. Because I've learned with that one, I can't push the connection. I can't push the usually it has to be the physical movement first of getting it out. And even with my child that cycles into a lot of sadness, she wants to just be able to feel sad and cry and process it and get it out without someone telling her, you shouldn't be crying about that, or this isn't a big deal, wipe up the tears, stop crying. She's feeling what she feels. And that is a big deal. What they feel is valid. Just like when I feel sad, that is also valid. And so providing that like connection, of let's move it out, let's get it out a little bit, and then let's talk about it when you're ready. And go from there. And usually it's amazing with kids, like they process, if they are given the space to process something, process is like it's a pretty quick process by just giving them the space to kind of move it, feel it, connect, really, right? That's what we all want as humans, is connection. And so that's what they're desiring too. And the narcissist is not going to give them validation, number one, is not going to give them connection, is going to load whatever they're feeling with shame, because the narcissist can't feel their own feelings. So they can't connect to someone else's feelings. And so that's the power right there, is to let it feel it, to validate it, and to connect in it.
I find it so valuable. And so this is gold, because the moment you try to kind of punish them for any type of emotion that they have, it will even create a new cycle of negativity and internal self-harm, if you will, when they try to
Yep.
when they start to talk negatively to themselves, right? And to self-control themselves in a box or in a sphere that keeps them in this negative loop, right? Every time you try to punish them for anything that is usually natural, right? So
Right.
I find that so valuable what you say, to just let it be, but find a space where it is safe for everyone, but just allowing it to happen because it's a normal and natural thing. And it
Yep.
brings peace to everyone, right? In the moment that we allow these emotions just to be and accept us in all the different colors that we are, right? The one is sad, the other one shuts down completely, the other one needs a bit anger, right? Anger management. I find it incredibly valuable. Where can people find you, and what are the types of services that you provide women that are going through divorce and high conflict divorce, and or maybe abusive relationships, and who want to get out of
Right.
it?
Yeah. You can find me on Instagram at Abundance Coaching Services. I am going through a little bit of rebranding right now, so bear with me on that. You can find me on Facebook, Stephenie Luttman. My website is still under construction, but yeah, I offer one-on-one support. I offer, like I said, I'm getting ready to launch my Facebook group. So that's free support if someone wants to reach out and say, yeah, I want in on that group. I have an online twice monthly group that's starting to meet every other Saturday morning, that we just started. Sorry, I just started. And yeah, that's where you can find me. I have I'm just now launching a 6-month coaching program where you can work with me one-on-one, and that puts you in a group. So yeah, those are the ways that you can reach out and find me right now. So.
And I will leave all the links to Stephenie's services and social media in the comments below, in the description, I mean. So you can get in contact with her if you need some type of support going through high conflict divorce or abusive relationships. Make sure you do. Don't brush it off thinking you can handle it yourself, because some situations are really tough to get through all by yourself. I can only highly encourage every woman who's going through this to get some type of support. And thank you so much, Stephenie. This was eye-opening, so many golden nuggets in this. And I would love to have you back on my podcast at some point, because there are still so many questions left that I would love to go through with you. Such an important topic, because as we are growing our businesses as businesswomen, you know, having children most of the time, right, trying to provide for our little families, we need to also think about all the other areas in our lives, right, and not just the business part, right, but these private areas are driving our business just as much, right? And once we get this private part running like a well-oiled machine, so to speak, not perfect, but well-oiled, that will actually drive our businesses so much better and so much more. So I find it so important to talk to you and other experts on my podcast, which I do every Friday or every other Friday. Thank you so much, Stephenie.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.